Tonight on Cosmic Cantina, we're heading way south, back to Antarctica. With the continent melting at a rather drastic rate, what might we uncover beneath the ice? Alien bases, pyramids, black goo? Anything is possible. We also have a special interview to discuss the topic and whether disclosure may be related to the Antarctic. So throw on some warm pants, because things are about to get chilly. I'm your host, Melissa Tittle, and every week I go to my favorite bar, Cosmic Cantina, and kick back with my co-hosts, Josh Golombeski and Matt O'Connor. We talk about aliens, Bigfoot, ghosts, ancient cultures, and anything from the unseen world that needs a little illumination. Welcome to Cosmic Cantina. I'm your host, Melissa Tittle, and tonight I'm drinking a little bit of Kim Crawford, which is a Sauvignon Blanc. It's very smooth. What about you guys?
She's a smooth lady. What do you got, Josh?
Well, that sounds very nice, Melissa Tittle. I am drinking my new favorite kombucha, Strange Beast. Let me put that right in the camera.
Bitch.
Yeah, she's
The
good. I'm not
bitch.
just drinking it because of the title, because it fits our podcast so perfectly, but it is really nice. That is what I'm drinking.
Huh.
What about you, O'Connor?
I got myself a can of the ginger beers, the boozy ginger beers from Brookvale Union, Australian brand. It's got an awesome little freaking image on top there. And yeah, it's gingery, it's boozy, sugary, it's all the things.
It's all the things.
Yeah.
Excellent.
All right.
Sounds
All right,
nice.
guys. Thank you so much for dealing with the fact that we needed a 2-week break. As you know, we've been trying to incorporate video and with our podcast, and we love all you guys. Thank you so much for hanging in there. So tonight, we're talking about Antarctica, because Antarctica is hot, because it's heating up. I don't know if you know
It
this,
is.
but things are melting and things are being revealed. So I'm going to go into a couple articles that talk about what has been revealed, especially during 2020, and then there's been a new drop of information in 2021, and I have a very interesting interview with somebody who has come back from an expedition of Antarctica, so this should be interesting. But what do you guys got for tonight?
After the interview with your special guest, he brings up this idea of the black goo. It's been
yes.
pretty constant bad guy in a lot of pop culture, movies, TV, all sorts of stuff. And so I did a little bit of a deep dive on where that all came about.
Yeah, no,
All
that's
right.
cool, man.
Absolutely.
I can't wait. Black goo, man. It's a great subject matter. Artificial intelligence, black goo. Well, I can't wait to hear what you're going to talk about, O'Connor. Me, I'm fired up right now because it is clear to this guy, this one man who's overly hyped about disclosure, that disclosure is happening. When people say, are we disclosure? Is this it? Are things being disclosed? The answer is yes, if you take the bird's eye view. And I'm going to break down the last year and the amount of events that have happened that are leading up to this June 1st deadline. Every event that's happened last year would be like the biggest UFO news of the decade, or at least a whole entire year. So I just want to go over this amazing timeline and 2 new things that happened recently in the last week that are just more evidence that we're getting slow drips of information leading up to some bigger moment, which may be June 1st.
Ooh.
All right. So I know that listening, you're probably thinking, how does disclosure fit in with Antarctica and black goo? Well, we're about to tell you. So let me start with my articles first. So during 2020, and of course we're going to post these articles, and you'll probably see them on screen if you're watching our video. I came across several articles about melting ice and certain things that are being uncovered. And I'm just going to go through them a little bit. I'm not saying that an alien ship has been uncovered, but they are interesting for what we're about to talk about in this interview. Okay, so the first one is hidden island uncovered in Antarctica after melting glaciers reveal its shore. It's also known as Doomsday Glacier, is one of the fastest retreating glaciers in Antarctica. The island is estimated to be 634,000 square feet, or about the size of UK's Windsor Castle. It's made of complete granite and has been buried underneath the thick layers of ice for many years. And then the next article, evidence of ancient rainforests in Antarctica points to warmer prehistoric world. After conducting a CT scan of a section of the core, researchers found a dense network of fossil roots. which was very well preserved. The sample also contained countless traces of pollen and spores from plants, including the first remnants of flowering plants ever found at these high Antarctic latitudes. Interesting. To get these conditions, scientists believe that 90 million years ago, the Antarctica continent was covered with vibrant, dense vegetation. 90 million years ago is a long time, but very interesting because most people that talk about Antarctica in this space talk about these huge crevasses that exist within the middle of Antarctica. They talk about hidden stuff underneath the ice, whether it's caves or possible pyramids or that kind of thing. So you have to think, like, yes, 90 million years is a long time ago, but throughout that period, a lot of different creatures, possibly human life, other kind of life could have lived there. So there might be a lot of other things to reveal in Antarctica. Okay, so March 20th, 2021, scientists discover Antarctica marine life trapped under ice for half a century. So scientists discover what they are calling the real life Loch Ness monster. This is a thing that's been frozen in the ice for millions of years, and it's called Elasmosaurus. Elasmosaurus.
Well done.
That's right. I didn't murder that. Elasmosaurus in Antarctica. And of course, we'll show a picture of it and you can see for yourself. It's some weird kind of monster looking thing that's been uncovered in the ice. They've never found one before, but this is what they're calling it. All right, so the reason I bring this up is obviously this is happening a lot in Greenland too. The ice is melting, and they're finding Nazi planes and bases and all that kind of stuff. So in Antarctica, a lot of researchers and esoteric people have been talking about how there's alien bases and certain military bases and possibly German soldiers and all that kind of stuff, right? But the reason I brought these articles up is that there might be some truth to it. So what I did is I interviewed Brad Olson. Brad Olson is the author of 10 books, including 3, which is a series called Modern Esoteric, Future Esoteric, and Beyond Esoteric. He award-winning author and a public speaker. He also funded a private trip to Antarctica where he continued his fascination and his research for some of these questions that he answers in his book called Beyond Esoteric. And we're going to show some of those images that he has kind of gathered through his research.
What do you think is down there? I mean, there's tons of speculation, right? If these bases do exist, not just the ones that we know about, that apparently 50 countries have some kind of settlement there or some kind of setup.
Yeah.
Is there something below the ice that in your research you can somewhat verify, people like Linda Moulton Howe's insider, that there's some kind of massive pyramid underneath, alien technology, some kind of ancient city, because there's a lot of interest down there. It can't just be because the ice is melting and they want to do scientific tests.
There's only 1,000 people on the entire continent of Antarctica, and that's the 5th largest continent of the world. It's like 2 Australias combined. So the distances are vast and there's just nobody there to witness. So if there was activity flying around, going to some of these under ice bases, nobody would even know about it. It is the place to hide out. So to your question about where they could exist or how, I suppose if you had enough money and let's say you're human based, yeah, people do have some secrets going on down there. Now, as far as I know, I'm the only researcher in this field that's actually gone down there and asked some of these big questions and was looking into this. And at the last live Contact in the Desert, I did a panel with Michael Sala and Linda Moulton Howe and spoke to both of them extensively about it before and after my trip. And Linda does get some good whistleblowers. I think Brian S. is the best one she's had. And he's the one that talks about the massive hole under the ice. And I did find out for sure there is a big no-fly zone over that region near South Pole. But it's a gaping hole about 35, 40 miles across. So big enough that even Admiral Byrd in these diaries, which are disputed for their authenticity, makes the assertion that he felt confident enough to fly a plane into the hole with enough room to circle around and come back out. Now, in my presentation that I give at conferences called The Hidden Anomalies of Antarctica, I show several pictures of what Antarctica would look without the ice. And there are fjords that travel for literally hundreds of miles if the ice wasn't there. And if there would be an ice dome, these U-boats could go great distances into the continent of Antarctica. And again, being completely undetected from the outside world. So who knows what they may have come across? Perhaps even pre-existing ET civilizations. And if that were the case, then they would have allied with some of these ET groups that helped them thwart the attack from Admiral Byrd under Operation High Jump, where they were routinely beat and sent back 2 months into the 6-month operation. And reportedly a UFO came out of the water.
Mm-hmm.
They tried to shoot it down. They couldn't penetrate it, couldn't even get near damaging the craft. And in a demonstration of force, it sliced one of the ships in half, called the USS Murdoch, and it sank to the bottom with great loss of life with like a directed energy laser weapon. So this is 1946. And on the way back, Admiral Byrd said to a Chilean journalist that we would be confronted with an enemy that has the ability to fly pole to pole at incredible speeds. And this is in 1946, 1947. And Melissa, I don't know of any craft that can do that we're even told about, but perhaps in the secret space program, they've been backward engineering this stuff for the better part of 100 years.
Well, speaking of engineering, there's something else you cover in your book that's really interesting. The black goo that was found on one of the islands of Antarctica. Talk to us about that.
And I also include that in my Antarctica presentation, because way down south there, they call them the Pan-Antarctic Islands. So there's quite a few islands south of the Falklands and the South Shetland Islands, the South Sandwich Islands, the southernmost island in that chain, which is kind of right on the other side of the Palmer Peninsula and Ushuaia, South America here, coming right on down, is an island called South Thule Island, Thule. We would have a tendency to call it Thule, but the Germans would say Thule. And it is of Norse legend. It's also the name of the Thule Society, which was an occult organization within the Fourth Reich or the Third Reich. And the expedition that went to Antarctica, Melissa, the New Schwabenland expedition, has 2 oak leaves, and that is a symbol for occult. So they always had occult reasons from the beginning going down there. So then having this this New Schwabenland base they wanted to protect, perhaps the backward engineered technology that the Nazis were working on made it down to these bases in combination with working with ETs. I know with the Vril Society, post-World War I, these long-haired women were channeling the Andromedeans and basically telepathically creating blueprints of anti-gravity, free energy, and massive spacefaring ships. So the Nazis had a huge, huge advantage and head start on the whole world, technology speaking.
And then they're the ones that went to this island and they found this black goo?
Well, that could be that the Nazis were there, but it could even be earlier that it was discovered. So the South Thule Island, which is pretty close to Antarctica and is frozen year round, and it's also masked, a portion of it, you can't even really see it on Google Earth. And I think that's where the caves were. So there were caves that were discovered there, and it had this black goo. And what is black goo? It is sentient, tar-like substance, which is a form of AI, artificial intelligence. There's 2 kinds of black goo, I understand. One is indigenous of this earth, and another is what was found on Thule Island, which was brought here from extraterrestrials and stored in a frozen rotunda. So data points on this, and this is how I collect and put together these mosaics with the most commonly referred to narrative of who brought it and why. And it was because there was a giant explosion on Toba Island, the Toba explosion on Sumatra Island in Indonesia about 74,000 years ago, which created a nuclear winter, and most humans on the surface planet died. There were so few of us, you could fill in the largest football stadium with all the humans on the planet. So at that period, because the surface was meant to be humans, that the black goo was deposited there by benevolent ETs, that in the event there was an alien invasion to be taken over by another hostile species, just getting rid of the humans, they could rapidly clone us and keep us here. That's the backstory from numerous sources. Okay. So the black goo had been studied very carefully, very cautiously, only in a base down there. And according to some of these people who researched this in England, with Miles Johnston on the Basis Project and Harold Kotzvela in Germany, say that the real reason the Falkland Wars was fought was because, and it shows you on Wikipedia, 2 sailing forces, and one of which went to the Southern Islands, the other went to the Falkland Wars, and that's what we hear about. But I remember when I was a kid hearing about this, it just never made sense. Why are they going down there? Why are they showing this huge force? Because the other split force was going to collect the black goo. That's what the Falkland Wars was all about.
So what you're saying is the UK got a hold of the black goo, and they have been possibly using it for some kind of weaponry?
They took it back to Marconi Laboratories in London to try to backward engineer it, to try to learn about it, to perhaps use it for cloning with MI6 and their alphabet agencies they have as well as we do. Mm-hmm. And it got loose in the 1980s. And there was a great loss of life at Marconi Laboratories of the scientists that were working on this. And you could look this up. It's pretty easily verifiable. They won't tell you much about the black goo because that part of it is still being kept under wraps. But the sources that were warning about this ever getting loose made a very dire warning to humanity. If the black goo ever got loose, it'd be a big problem for us to collect it all and put the genie back in the bottle and take it back to southern Thule Island and leave it frozen where it can't do any damage.
But it's out. You're saying
it's out.
Yeah. And it's it's not controllable by any government, meaning it's in food, it's in water, where is it what is it doing?
Well, like any life.
Is it only in Cancun, Mexico? Like when you go there on spring break and all of a sudden you get the black goo and then you're like, I should have gone there.
But you do see it featured in movies quite a bit.
True.
There's a dozen or two movies that show black goo, including Prometheus. Mm-hmm. That was a big part of that movie. And then in the conspiracy research side, you had a super soldier named Max Spears who died at a very young age. I think he was 33 years old. And when he was seen breathing his last breath, black goo was coming out of his mouth, like some black kind of bile. It may not have been black goo, but interesting that there are so many other parallels. But then also one of the side effects of Morgellons is it will leave behind a tar-like substance. Even when the fibers come out, it leaves behind. And I'm one of the first researchers to suggest this, that this is what the black goo being unleashed has now surfaced, not only in humans, but now animals are starting to show Morgellon fibers. And that could be separate, but one of the side effects is a black tarry-like substance that will come out of the skin as well.
Oof. So it sounds like Antarctica, as everybody imagines, is just full of mystery still, right? Possible UFO stuff that's black goo, alien technology, ancient civilizations, if you will. Do you think that Antarctica might be part of this anticipated UFO disclosure? They just keep pushing and pushing. It's supposedly supposed to happen in June. Do you think that Antarctica is actually part of that plan?
Well, in Page 252 in my new book, I do talk about a big reveal coming. This is actually called Project Bluebeam. And a lot of people just think of the holographic image of ships coming in, and that's a big part of it. That's what's going to be the most mind-blowing of all if they try to do this. But there are first steps before the faked alien invasion, and this is a false flag, let's be clear. But there would be some big reveal. Now, the big reveal could be based on truth, or maybe it could be partly staged and partly truth, maybe like the Apollo or Mars rover. You see some landscapes and frozen environments here on Earth, and there's the rover, and they're playing it off as that. I've always thought that, too, about the Apollo landing, that there were some fake Kubrick shots they just threw into the mix. But they really did go to the moon, and there really could be a large craft under the ice that gets revealed. And I've identified at least one of the three which are often talked about. And the alphabet agencies in our country have nicknamed them the Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria, guarded over by the NSA. The NSA, no such agency. They're more notorious for what Edward Snowden said they were doing, spying on all of us, which they do. But they're also in control of anything extraterrestrial. They're Johnny on the spot with every craft retrieval, and also with whatever messaging needs to be put out to create a cover story. And the NSA is active down in Antarctica, as well as on the South Pole, Amundsen Scott Station, where they would monitor activity in and out of the giant hole in the ice. Mm-hmm. There's also a very famous building at McMurdo, which is an NSA building that nobody knows anything about. I think it's called Hangar 13, or it's a weird name. I know that was a movie, but there is a building, and it's been confirmed by several people that it's there. So they have a presence there, and they control the narrative, okay? So anything this big on this scale, you got to understand this is being manufactured. And we've known about this thing for a long time, decades really, this craft under the ice. So which one gets revealed and how it's rolled out, and if it includes bones of giants, is also in the proposal for the first step of Bluebeam. So everybody gets their mind blown by what was discovered and the existence of giants on Earth. And this is already pretty well established UFOs, and known. Yeah.
Ancient technology. So you're thinking Antarctica's a hotspot because we could just collect all of that. It could just all be down there. So they could just open the veil on Antarctica, and then they've crossed all of their, or checked all their boxes, and now they have their massive disclosure.
I couldn't think of a better place to roll out something like a discovery of a giant craft, and oh, look, now we also found giant bones, and some of them are mummified or in stasis still. So everybody would have their mind blown from that story, right?
Right.
Then once the public is conditioned to massive crafts and alien species, then they could roll out the holographic sky show, including voice-to-skull technology, and it would also include saviors. So every country of the world, I don't know at what step this would happen, but part of the narrative of what Project Bluebeam is in Christian countries, Jesus would appear, and we would hear him speaking to us in our head. Everybody would. In Muslim countries, they would see Muhammad, although I don't think it's allowed to show him. But Hindu countries would see Shiva or Vishnu. Buddha countries would see Buddha, and they would hear the Buddha talking to them. But it's all fake. It would all be fake. It would be the biggest fake out, biggest false flag in world history. And for that would be the roll in, the full scale implementation of New World Order. And that is scheduled. It's all slated for this decade to be completed by 2030. If it doesn't, then perhaps that timeline has been thwarted and it's not going to happen. So I've talked to super soldiers. I just moderated a super soldier panel at the 5D in Vegas last weekend. And some of them think that people are too awoken now, that it would just be way too transparent. I mean, if we can have this conversation and it does happen, then boy, did we scoop this story. But probably because so many are awoken and know about it, and I write about it in my book, and people talk about it at these conferences, that cover's blown. Yeah. Right. And maybe it won't ever happen.
Thanks for joining us, Brad.
Oh, you're very welcome, Melissa. Thanks for having me on, guys. Really enjoyed it.
You guys, wasn't that fascinating? Like the whole idea with the black goo and possibly this is part of Antarctica's part of this massive disclosure.
Ooh, I'm all in on Antarctica and black goo. I haven't really researched a lot of black goo stuff before, so I'm interested to see what you're going to bring up, Matt. But I found that super fascinating, and especially with it being part of the disclosure movement and the nearing disclosure, as I like to call it, and the fact that it could be more than just UFOs, maybe giants and ancient civilizations and underground bases. The whole thing is fascinating. What about you, O'Connor?
He didn't mention this, but it reminds me of like when people like talking about different places where there could be like these ancient viruses that are under the ground, that are being like defrosted and then soon to be released. Maybe that's where some of this black goo stuff comes from as well.
The Thing. Yeah.
But
yeah.
Ooh.
It's
The Thing is one of my
for sure.
favorite movies of all time. Right on.
Awesome. All right, Matt. So what do you got? You got something dark. You got something deep. You got something gooey. Maybe gooey. I think it's kind of gooey.
It's
Ew.
gooey. It's a little sticky. It's viscous. I love all these
I
words.
like that word.
But it's black.
Interesting.
So
Ew.
I
I thought it was something else, but okay.
gross. So I was intrigued, to say the least, of this black goo stuff, because obviously, you know, like I said at the top of the show, we've seen this like countless times in pop culture all over the world, TV, movies. It's like this constant antagonist, I guess, in a lot of films.
Yeah.
Or
This
or,
lubricating
MacGuffin or
antagonist.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait. I thought that
Yeah.
was Angel Hair. Is Angel Hair a protagonist?
That
Well,
should be the next one. I need a movie with
Angel hair versus dark goo. Yeah, this is black goo. This
Yeah.
is yeah.
Battle of the Goo.
I'll direct
Yeah.
that.
Anywho.
Maybe I did in Van
And then
Nuys.
they like make love and they make like a new alien. Okay, sorry. All right. So
Yeah.
Matt, what were you talking about? I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I totally interrupted.
So, black goo. So I tried to
Viscous.
find, like, it's pretty crazy, right? So it's apparently this, like, the stuff that has a sentience. It's of possibly alien origin. It's able to change DNA. There's, like, all these different stories about it.
Wait, remember
so-
the beginning of the movie? Is it Prometheus? How do you say it? Prometheus.
Prometheus.
Doesn't he turn into black goo when he fades into the water?
Yeah, so
Isn't it
he
a symbol
drinks-
of like life and?
Yeah, one of the engineers drinks the stuff, and it basically breaks down his body and begins to seed life on the planet. As best I could tell, this little doozy popped up via a story from a UFO researcher from England. His name's David Griffin. He was from a group called Exopolitics UK.
Okay.
And he kind of linked this black goo stuff to a story about the Falklands War, which happened in 1982, that had this supposedly alien aspect to it. So, well, let's dive a little deeper.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Let's get deeper.
here's the
Come
kicker.
on.
Where did David Griffin get the bulk of his information on this? As far as I can see, this guy was kind of the catalyst for this whole black goo stuff. I mean, it's been around for decades, obviously, and like we said, media, children's cartoons. Like, remember that cartoon Fern Gully? Way back in the
Yes.
day, in the 90s.
I remember
It was
Fern Gully.
I
Black
like Fern
goo
Gully.
was like the bad. It's always the bad guy, right? It's always the constant evil. It's just a visceral image. It's basically like a congealed, boiled down version of what evil is, and I think it's just an easy bad guy. It's like if you put an antagonist in a movie that's the Nazis, you automatically know they're the bad guy. There's no backstory needed, you know? It's just the same thing. I don't know. So anyway,
That's really interesting. I wonder if it's like a human subconscious thing, though. The fact that it's in so, like, I mean, like, I never thought of, like, Fern Gully, and like, until you mentioned that, until you brought up the black goo, I was like, you know, so it's like filmmakers just come up with ideas because they think they're cool sometimes. So where did that come from? Maybe it's a subconscious thing that
and
we're
it even goes.
constant.
There's even older stuff. I couldn't find like the oldest one, but it even goes back even further than that. Like, you know, there's the Blob was like an old 50s,
Yeah.
60s movie. I don't know.
Yeah.
I used to love the Blob.
Yeah, I mean that was
Blob.
pink goo, but you know,
Yeah.
it's goo. sentient.
Don't
goo.
disrespect the blob.
Obviously, the X-Files had a huge story arc that involved this black cancer. You know, the
Like
goo.
Venom from Spider-Man and
Venom
and
was
the
another
Marvel.
one. Yeah. So I mean, it's just It's just a constant over and over again. So David Griffin apparently got the bulk of his information from a Kiwi, a New Zealander, which automatically red flags jumping up. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding, Kiwis. I'm kidding. I love yous. Everything's fine. Anyway, but this guy was.
Wait! I got something. I got something for you.
There it is. Eat a bag of dicks. A whole bag. Straight up. All right. Anyway, so this guy was claimed to be a contactee, and he claimed to have been abducted. He was taken to this blue alien planet, which is apparently called Haven.
It sounds like a place.
sex island, you know, like he
Sounds like a-
too.
It sounds like a place where you
Haven.
buy weed. Like, I'm gonna go to the Haven
I know.
and
Yeah.
get my weed
Oh.
gummies because I'm out.
Get some edibles. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like it. We should start
Yeah.
that. Anyway, write that down.
Or orgies.
So,
One of the two, yeah.
weed and orgies, yeah. So,
What?
so he was taken to this planet, and he was basically shown, like we've seen many contactees talk about, showing these images of wars and stuff. One of the wars he saw was apparently he recognized as the Falklands War, and then saw the subsequent storming of this alien base on the island. So this is basically where it comes from. Blue alien base. So apparently they took the black goo from there and brought it back to the UK to test it and stuff. And the story goes that it was brought back to this Marconi defense contractor in the UK. Now, this is an actual thing. So back in, I have the article here, so I'll post these articles as well, like we always do. But this was an 87 article in the Associated Press. And it's talking about how there's these baffling mystery dead scientists kept popping up that were kind of all working for the same company. So there was all these scientists. I think there was 6 of them all up. 4 of them committed suicide in various ways. There was one guy who, the craziest one was he filled his car full of tanks of gasoline and drove it into a building. I think it was like a restaurant that was empty at the time, and exploded himself. Another guy tied a rope around his neck and drove it, and the other into a tree, and he drove his car and it basically decapitated him.
Wait, hold on a second. All 6 scientists were working at the same lab. That apparently that's where this story says the black goo went to.
Yeah, there's no evidence to say that this black goo went anywhere, but I don't know why people
the
link
evidence
this.
that the 6 scientists died of
Yes,
weird
this is true.
circumstances is
This
true.
is a real thing. Yes.
Okay,
So this
got
is
it.
legitimately
Okay.
weird. Even though these guys, like the company said, these guys were working on separate programs for separate companies under Marconi at separate locations within the company, it's still kind of weird. Like, they still said, like, we should probably look into this, but they couldn't find a connection between the guys. Legitimately weird story about these guys all killing themselves. Like,
Yeah,
that
that's
is kind of
super
weird.
weird.
6 guys within a really short period of time. And as far as this document goes, I think they said 2 of them they didn't even find. Like, they went missing. So that was kind of weird.
So wait, hold on a second. Well, what are they working on then?
There was a bunch of different stuff.
So
Yeah.
whatever they were working on, here's
So
the
they
thing.
weren't all working on the same. That's what they said. They weren't working on the same project. Some of them weren't even in the same area, in the same location. It was like obviously secret technology. You know, they're a defense contractor, so you could say whatever it was. But this is again, this is from the Marconi, their official statement. So take that as you will. If you don't trust the company, then I'm sure they have their secrets.
Truth in situations gets muddled, right? So is it this black goo that came from the islands, and then they were testing with it, and then everybody turned crazy because the aliens got in their bloodstream? I don't know, but they were testing with something that kind of made people go crazy. Now, the fact that they're not working on the same project, I don't know if that's true or not, that statement, but don't you think that's a little weird? Now, I'm not saying it's black goo, but I'm just saying that the fact that their deaths are so unusual and so violent, it's so
All
so
involving
driven.
cars, which is weird too. I think the final guy locked
psychological.
himself in his garage and like carbon monoxided himself. So yeah, definitely weird stuff. And if there is a connection, maybe it has something to do with what they were working on. I don't know.
All right.
Like we talked about before, I just wanted to get into like this whole archetypal thing because there was a couple of interesting things that came out of the black goo being this living evil that goes back decades, like I said, through popular culture. And like I said, it's like this easy visual for us to instantly see that this sentient black sludge is like, it's bad. It's a bad thing. It's like you see a spider, you run away. But there was this interesting article that I read that kind of explores this idea of the black goo and this being a powerful symbol, this visual metaphor for something inhumane or anti-human. And actually, I heard there was another someone writing about the black goo more conspiratorial as being like the Antichrist. The Antichrist being, and this was all sort of dug up from Antarctica, apparently, the Antichrist being not a person or a personification of the devil or whatever, but a virus that goes and wipes out the humankind. Anyway, so there was an interesting couple of quotes that came out of this article, one from futurist Michael Garfield, who put it, "We amplify the present in our speculative fictions. As a programmable matter, black goo is the ghee or the cream of technology, a matured image of the technium, the seventh kingdom of life, which Kevin Kelly calls the greater, global, massively interconnected system of technology vibrating around us. It's a symbolic organism co-evolving with us, and it's evil. Not as something theological or harmful, but as the enunciation of the next level of order." So it's like this fear of where we will evolve to as humans, I guess. Like, I guess it goes with transhumanism and the that whole thing too. But after that, like that's like
really
an interesting like thought on that on the whole visual of it. But there was just this thing from Terence McKenna, who talked about ayahuasca, and I was like, hang on, I'm on board for this, Terence. What do you got, fella? And he was talking about this this stuff called the psychofluid. And he says, when you vomit from taking ayahuasca, this dark fluid comes out of your body. It also forms on the surface of the skin like sweat. The Jivaro do much of their magic with this peculiar stuff. So these matters are extremely secret. Informants insist that the shamans spread the stuff out on the ground in front of them, and that one can look at this material and see other times and other places, according to the reports. The nature of this fluid is completely outside of ordinary experience. It is made out of space-time or mind, or has a pure hallucinogen objectively expressed by always keeping itself within the confines of a liquid. So, again, it's like this...
Interesting.
Yeah, it's like this like ancient, like, sentient liquid that's kind of like the building blocks of consciousness or whatever. I don't know. It was just a weird connection. I don't think it has anything
really
to do with black goo.
weird.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't remember when I did ayahuasca. I mean, I puked up a lot, but I don't remember being like, oh, it's black goo.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And I don't think it's specifically black. Like, it could be any color, really, but I don't know what color the vomit is. I've never done it, so anyway.
It's a very interesting connection, though. As if whatever that black goo is, I mean, we just think about the subject matter. It's in all of us. But how to harness the power of what that is maybe what this is all about. And who has the power to do that? I mean, I don't know. I love all the psychological, philosophical points of view that you came up with. That's cool.
Yeah. So that's where I'm at.
Interesting. Well, but apparently, according to the government, there is some disclosure happening, and that's one thing that Brad mentioned in this interview, was that maybe Antarctica is part of, like, that is going to be the point. That's the PowerPoint of which disclosure will happen. Josh, what do you got, butt probes?
Eat a bag of dicks. That interview was awesome, And I couldn't find anything new on Antarctica, but the disclosure part of it really got me because I've been thinking about disclosure a lot lately. I mean, I think about it a lot, but even more so lately because of recent events. But I just wanted to do a quick check on the timeline of like, okay, what's really happening right now? I'm really big into cryptocurrency, and one thing you always do in the moment is you pull out and you look at the charts from like a year, not like a week or a day, and you really see what's going on. And you get a clear picture of what's happening, if a coin is working or not. And I've kind of applied that to disclosure. And if I really look back over the last year, especially, you could see a massive increase in news, like real news, not just sightings. We don't know, like this, if there's more sightings or not, that's debatable. But there's more news or more dripping of disclosure happening. So let me take you on a quick ride. First of all, when people look back in time, they're probably going to say, disclosure began December 2017 when the New York Times published that article about ATIP, a secret government program called the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, threat, the key word in there, that was studying UFOs for the government. And we knew right then and there the government took the phenomenon seriously and had been lying to us. So that's why I have a hard time trusting Luis Elizondo. So that same year, 2 years later, we get the show Unidentified Season 1, which was actually well done, but again, it was threat-based and scary. 2020, on April 27th, the UFO videos of the three videos of the Go Fast, the Gimbal, and the FLIR video are all officially declassified. They've been out in the arena for a couple years, but they weren't officially acknowledged by the Navy, and the Navy officially put them on their website, said, yes, these are UAPs, we don't know what these are. Going forward, that same year, June 19th, 2020, this is what President Trump at the time said to his son who was interviewing him. His son asked him vaguely about Roswell. Trump responded, I won't talk to you about what I know about it, but it's very interesting. I wasn't trying to do a Trump impersonation there, just to be clear.
I'm disappointed.
I'm not good at that one. Same year, August 4th, 2020, the government officially formed the UFO Task Force, which I just want to read exactly what they say on their site because it's real and it's important. The Department of Defense established the UAPTF to improve its understanding of and gain insight into the nature and origins of UAPs. The mission of the task force is to detect, analyze, and catalog those sweet UAPs, I didn't say sweet, that could potentially pose a threat to U.S. national security. So that happened 2020. Ba-bang! Same month, on the 22nd, Unidentified Season 2 drops. Episode 4 is my least favorite episode. It's called Planetary Threat, where they really push through that threat agenda to really make you scared of UFOs invading our airspace. PTSA. December 8th, 2020. Okay, so by the way, the UFO Task Force on August 4th, 2020, that would have been the biggest news of the decade in the 80s or 90s, like for UFO culture. Like, that's a huge deal. It's a big acknowledgement. It just all was dropping during the middle of COVID, so people were just like, what, aliens? They kind of made a joke about it and moved on. But it gets crazier. December 8th, 2020, the former space security chief, basically, Haim Eshed, I believe is how you pronounce it, came forward and said there's a galactic federation of aliens that we are in. This is what he said. He said that cooperation agreements have been signed between species, including an underground base in the depths of Mars. I know we've covered this, but it's important to reiterate. There's an agreement between the U.S. government and the aliens. They signed a contract with us to do experiments here. That's crazy. That would have been the biggest news of the entire decade if that was any other year. But this is just one after another hitting us so fast, we're preparing our minds for something bigger. January 10th,
also,
2020. Go on.
Just to pull you up there, big guy. This year, well, I guess 2020 in general was fucking insane, you know?
Yeah.
So dropping this shit on top of the pandemic, on top of everything else that's happening.
Politics, all that stuff.
It gets kind of, all the politics and all the nonsense. It does tend to get lost in the ocean, you know?
Yeah, but that's where you think to yourself, okay, well, it's not like they just discovered that they're real in the last couple months of 2020. You know what I'm saying? It's just like a very strategic move because it's going to be buried underneath other things that people are more important, that people find more important.
Yeah, the timing's interesting. Why'd they wait to COVID to do it? And I'm not saying all these events are connected. Some of them might just be their own thing. But it seems eerie that so many high-level people have come forward. And it keeps going on and on. And I'll quickly go through all the ones leading up to the last two in the last couple of weeks, which are just, I think, profound. And one of them, honestly, would have been the biggest news ever about UFOs. And I'm surprised it's not catching more fire. It's just not, because we're used to it now. But then we had the COVID bill came out. And in the COVID bill, there was an amendment for the UFO Task Force to present information in 6 months in June. This came out in January 2021 of this year. That is a huge deal. That, again, was another gigantic moment. They have to come forward with all the information. That same month, 3 days later, the CIA dumped a bunch of documents about UFOs. Most of them were mass sandwiches. It wasn't really, they were fun stories, like with Russians and RPGs and shit. Like, it was awesome. But like, none of it was like profound. But still, they dumped it in January, right after the bill was signed. Then, in February, the Harvard professor, Avi Loeb, the astrophysicist, comes forward and talks about how that flying turd that went through our solar system like 3 or 4 years ago, like the giant, I can't pronounce it, some Hawaiian name that means scout, which is, I think, funny because that's another term for a poop. Yeah. You know, some Moana rock was flying through the sky. And he was saying that shit was aliens. I mean, have you ever really read what he said? He said, this is what he said.
Yeah, but it was like space junk.
Yeah.
Well, he said it's
aliens.
nothing less than humanity's first contact with an artifact of extraterrestrial intelligence.
Yeah.
I mean, Harvard professor just dropping that. Let's just ignore that. Let's not talk about that. That
think
same month, 2 days later. Go on.
He was shut down pretty quickly by other astronomers. That was ridiculous, but that's bound to happen.
Yeah, but of course, but still, like, I mean, he didn't get into Harvard because he's a dumb guy. And he's not going to throw away the fact that he's done all this research because, he just wants to. Do what? Be part of the government conspiracy chain? I don't know. I think it's a different. Right. I just got his book, by the way. I haven't finished reading it. So
he's trying to sell a book, but like, unless he like owes money to the mob or something, like, why is a Harvard professor like?
Right.
He's not going to go out on a limb for that. It should be taken seriously at the very least. Could he be wrong? Of course. But all these things together, are they all wrong? No. And it gets crazier. It gets crazier and crazier.
And then all of a sudden you're selling beer to Martians or like blue people.
I'm
hey,
in.
So you know what happened?
Brewery and served aliens. I'd love that. Yeah.
You know what Randy Kramer forgot to tell us was that what happened at the Falkland Islands was that they showed up with a bunch of beer and they're like, give us the fucking goo and we'll give you the beer. And it like went smoothly. It actually went smoothly. We just made it this whole thing that it was this big war, but it wasn't.
It was too ridiculous.
We won.
Yeah, we had to cover it up.
Yeah.
And we won!
Okay, ready? Accelerates. Bang. All of a sudden, there's UFO patents being talked about all over the news about, and the headlines are, the U.S. Navy has patents on tech it says will engineer the fabric of reality. And there's all these crazy patents about UFO, basically reverse engineered, what do they call them? Hybrids, aerospace, underwater craft, compact fusion reactors. All this stuff came out in mainstream news that the Navy has patents for, which is all very reverse engineered UFO-y in my opinion. Then boom, March 2021, this month, Senator Rubio goes on Fox News and says like, yeah, UFOs are flying over our bases and nuclear sites and we got to understand what's going on there. That was this month. Again this month, huge news. I think probably some of the biggest UFO news ever, not from an event standpoint, not like the Phoenix Lights or some sexy Nimitz incident, but just someone coming forward of high ranking and saying something about the UFO phenomenon. The director of national intelligence, well, the former technically, because he was just Trump's, not the new one, he just came out on Fox News and dropped some stuff that is really shocking. I posted this on our Facebook site, but here's just a couple things he said that just would just kind of shock you that this isn't bigger news and more people know about it. So this is what he said. Ratcliffe said there have been objects observed by U.S. military craft and satellites that have achieved forms of flight that would normally be impossible with any known human technology. I can't understate the word satellite in there because no one's come forward and said we've tracked it on our satellites before. That's the first admission, I think, by anybody of any power to say that. That's a big deal. And Nick Pope also, that's where I got this from. Nick Pope went off on a podcast and on Gaia News about that. And I just thought that is profound. No one's ever admitted that before. So this is what else he said. When we're talking about sightings, we are talking about objects that have been seen by Navy or Air Force pilots or have been picked up by satellite imagery that are frankly engaged in actions that are difficult to explain. We cannot replicate them with our technology. So that is just huge news. that feels like it's leading to something. Because why would he say that? He goes on to say he really wanted to get it out before he left office, but he couldn't. He couldn't get it together quick enough, and he thinks what's going to happen in June is going to be a big deal. I mean, he basically informed the information coming out is going to be a huge deal, and it's going to cause an impact, which is cool. I was like, that's the director of national intelligence. Like he's a big deal. Also this week, a smaller story, but this is the last thing I wanted to say is there was also just a recent article that came out about how a bunch of ships off the Pacific coast, a bunch of warships were tracked and harassed by what they were calling drones for like 3 days, flying and matching the ship's speeds and flying over them like crazy. And they have no idea what they are, where they came from. I didn't see the word Tic Tac in there, so I'm not sure if this is alien or just real drones, but it's just an interesting other article. Of course, Dr. Stephen Greer was all over that and called it just fear-based propaganda, and that's what I'm worried about. So the big picture here, guys, is, in my opinion, we are heading towards disclosure. June 1st in this month, whenever this information comes out, even if it gets delayed, is going to be significant. Will it be like everything we wanted? Probably not. Could it be? Maybe. Could it be paradigm shifting? I think it's a probability. I can't, obviously, I don't know what's going to happen, but it feels like clearly if you just pull back and look, we're building towards something. There hasn't been that many stories in a row ever, really. Maybe in the 50s and 60s when this shit was really hot, but this is a big deal. And I just, the evidence is there. Like, I'm confident to say this is disclosure. We're in the middle of it. It's slow dripped, and now it's just about whether it's going to be threat-based or it's going to be hope-based. And from the looks of it, it's going to be threat-based.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about Project Bluebeam, obviously, but I think it is still an idea that has legs, you know? Like the whole, like, using some sort of threat, alien-based threat, as a catalyst to be like, all right, we're going to have to bring in some new rules here, guys, and we're all working together now. Yeah. I think
to weaponize space, to keep the military-industrial complex working hard. Yeah, this is. It seems. I don't know. I want a fun disclosure where we're skipping and high-fiving aliens and having picnics and inviting them over for dinner. Like that's what I want.
And
like,
butt probes. And butt probes.
But but consensual butt probes. It's fine. No insectoids get near my ass, but a sexy, a Palladian. We'll talk about it. Got to check in with the wife first.
Or a Nordic.
Or a Nordic. Or Syrian.
Okay,
Those are my people.
Okay.
I don't know.
All right. Okay. All right. Stop it. Stop. All right. Enough. This isn't Bumble for who gets to butt probe you. All right. I don't think you get a choice.
Ooh, there's a new avenue right there.
Alien OnlyFans.
Alien Bumble.
All right. If somebody starts that, we need to take credit for that. But I think that another point to that is, yes, I think we're building up to something. Could it be that massive disclosure be in Antarctica? Of course, Brad was saying all of this stuff that we've been building up to, whether Bigfoot exists, and giants, and aliens, and all this kind of stuff. It's all going to be revealed because it's all there in Antarctica. I don't know if that's true or not. It's an interesting story. I think that the idea that not only is there a slow drip disclosure, but ice is slowly melting and revealing new parts about Antarctica, whether it's scientifically or in the government conspiracy space. I think that there is some weight to what might be happening in Antarctica. So, with that, I hope you have a good night and be safe out there. And get a mug like this.
Eat a bag of dicks. And goodbye.